Welcome to Board and Committee Roles and Responsibilities, Part 2, presented by CAI's Greater Inland Empire chapter. In Part 1, we discussed the four main functions of community association boards, qualities of a strong board member, and the duties of care, loyalty, and acting within the scope of your authority. In Lesson 2, you will learn to describe liability issues and protection for board members, list 3 types of committees and their roles, and help your committee achieve success. In Lesson 1, we discussed that board members act as fiduciaries entrusted to act on behalf of others, which means board members generally have 3 basic duties. The duty of care, they need to make informed decisions and have done some research into the issues. Actually, read their board packets before walking into the room. Duty of loyalty, they need to act in good faith for the benefit of the community association. If there is a conflict about who benefits, the board member needs to decide in a way that supports the community as a whole. And the duty to act within the scope of authority. In other words, they have to know what their authority actually is. Now consider the following scenario. Mr. Goldstone is livid. The Community Association's clubhouse has been undergoing renovations and experiencing construction delays for over 8 months. Mr. Goldstone's daughter is about to get married, and he had been counting on using the facility for her reception. He claims the ineptitude of the board has created the delays, and its negligence in performing its duties has denied him access to amenities he helps finance. What happens if he sues the board? Are the board members liable? The answer, of course, depends on the specific circumstances. As a general rule, however, the Volunteer Protection Act, VPA, passed by Congress in 1997, provides some protection to community volunteers acting in good faith within the scope of their authority. All 50 states and the District of Columbia also provide some form of charitable immunity for unpaid agents acting on behalf of nonprofit organizations. The Davis-Sterling Act requires that community associations carry directors' and officers' liability insurance. We will talk about that in the next slide. For details on what the federal and state laws say about liability, consult with an attorney or insurance professional who specializes in working with community associations. Directors and Officers Liability Insurance, D&O, is designed to pay for damages arising from wrongful acts. Examples of wrongful acts include the failure to file taxes, collect assessments, maintain replacement reserves, or deliver core services to its residents, members, owners, and tenants. Some acts are covered under other policies and would not be covered under the Directors and Officers Liability Policy, like those that lead to property damage, bodily injury, advertising injury, or personal injury. For instance, the board or the community association may be at fault for not fixing handrails. If someone falls and gets hurt, then the result of that wrongful behavior has led to bodily injury, which is insured in the Commercial General Liability Policy and not in the D&O policy. On the other hand, D&O will defend the board and may pay for any settlements or judgment if an owner sued the association for not uniformly enforcing the governing documents. The insured should specifically include the community association, committee members, and employees, as well as board directors and officers, whether they are elected or appointed, and whether they are past or current. True or false? The Volunteer Protection Act, VPA, of 1997 guarantees that board members of a community association cannot be personally held liable for their actions. And the answer is that it's false because the VPA does not guarantee immunity in all matters, but it does provide protection to those acting in good faith within the scope of their authority. Boards can't always accomplish everything that needs to be done, particularly in large communities. For example, many communities enjoy having a party during the holidays. In many cases, if planning a large-scale party was left up to the board alone, these events might not occur. Fortunately, each year residents who are good at organizing these affairs volunteer on a committee to make things happen. There are 3 types of committees. Ad hoc committees are created for a particular task, such as organizing a children's party in the common area. They are disbanded when the task is complete. A mandatory committee is one that is required by the governing documents. Mandatory committees typically are assigned responsibilities related to elections, nominations, and architectural standards, among others. Standing committees are created for an ongoing function. They remain in force indefinitely, although the standing members may change. If the bylaws do not name certain committees that the board has determined it needs on an ongoing basis, an administrative resolution should be used to create a standing committee. These committees meet a community association's basic continuing need. Examples of typical standing committees that are not mandated include Budget and Finance, Grounds, Social or Welcoming Committee, Newsletter, Recreation, and Public Relations. Committees are training ground for future board members. Since committees are called on to participate in board meetings to give reports, they have a front row seat on how the board operates. It's smart to regard effective committee members as potential candidates for board service and encourage their successful performance. To help in this effort, the board should develop a charter for each committee to define its structure, its function, and responsibility. Board members should act or follow up on the committee's recommendations in a reasonable time frame and publicly recognize those who volunteer their time and effort. The board secretary recruited Letitia to head up a committee for the grand opening of the association's new recreation center next month. Letitia's committee is an example of what type of committee? A, ad hoc, B, special, C, standing, D, mandatory. This is an example of an ad hoc committee formed for a specific task. In this lesson, we discussed liability issues and protection for board members, 3 types of committees and their roles, and how to help committees achieve success. In the next segment, we will explore recognizing the roles and responsibilities of each officer and recognizing the importance of recruiting new board members and orienting them well.